Yeah.
Good morning. I've already pushed record.
Oh, you have?
Yes, we're on.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
I did that because I have such trouble pushing that record button. But
Right.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Doug.
What an excellent introduction. That was excellent. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Just
It
went
is
ahead and...
hilarious to me that you have so much difficulty just saying, okay, I'm ready.
I know. Yeah. It's funny. But anyway, here we are
But here
again.
we are. Yeah. And it's already the end of June the 27th, this podcast going out here as we wind down another month. And 1 week from today will be the 4th of July.
Holy moly.
Which means you're going to give everybody a day off, right?
I'm going to give my crowd of fans.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. I'm going to give you all a week off to go celebrate with your family.
Oh, how
But
nice.
What happens around here on July 4th?
Oh, over here?
What do you
with
start
me?
doing? Yeah.
Well, I receive heavy criticism, but
every year
life passes so quickly that I started a few years back. When it gets to July 4th, I start singing Jingle Bells.
You come in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's the song I hear on
And
July 4th.
It just
so
seems
funny.
to be that it just takes off and goes downhill from here so quickly, as most of life does. No, it really...
And you would think, let me just interrupt, you would think somebody who, according to last week's podcast, is very future thinking, that I would go ahead and be thinking about Christmas.
Hello.
And getting a Christmas list ready, but nope. I am the biggest procrastinator when it comes to that. But that's a whole other
That's a different
show.
deal.
Let's get started with this week.
Yeah, and I like this week because you've been talking to me about different things you've read, showed and shared with me some examples of folks who react to the Enneagram from the standpoint of resistance.
Yes.
And and I'm glad you're talking about this today because that is a topic in and of itself. And it's just something that I've experienced when I've talked with folks about things like integral theory or spiral dynamics. There are always different folks that are not going to be interested and actually will resist it and will find some reason or some way to criticize it.
Oh, well, and that's kind of what got me thinking about that this week is I have an Instagram account, which everybody does, and it's for this podcast. It's Love Thy Number. Oh, y'all, follow me on Instagram. But anyway, I had put a picture up of my class when we went through the certification program, and there was like 20-something of us, and we're all sitting around in a group. The Enneagram symbol is on the floor, and we're all just happy. We're holding up our own particular number, and I love the picture. But, I had some really vicious comments on that picture.
Amazing.
I'm so shocked. I'm always shocked at people who will, lash out at somebody on the internet, and they don't know me. And so one person commented and said, "You don't know these people. They worship Satan."
Yeah.
And
thank goodness for that warning. Because you thought you were having a good time and learning a lot about how to relate better to other humans.
And it's actually such a spiritual journey.
Yeah.
That's anything but a religious cult. Well, and that's another thing. People even said that this is a cult. And anyway, there were a couple of other comments that I was like, what happened here? What happened to my happy picture?
Exactly.
And it really just got me to thinking, people are so resistant to something they don't know.
Right. And for a variety of reasons. And that's why when you and I started talking about this over the last week, we began to talk about the various reasons why people do resist. And I think one of the big things also that I've experienced in life, most people experience is, man, when you find something that you think is really cool, let's say you've watched a movie and the movie was just fantastic. You want to tell everybody else about it. Oh man, you got to see this movie. You've got to read this book. And when it comes to self-discovery, when you are finding tools that are really making a big, meaningful difference in your life, it's a natural thing to want to share something with people. And I've talked to people along the way, live in different parts of the country and even other countries, and every one of them has experiences with people who resist vehemently.
Oh, well, and once I step back from the new and excitement and wanting to share this, I understand. I think about that example that I've used forever. But, the butterfly?
Yes.
Yeah. So the butterfly is in the cocoon. And so the story goes that there was a butterfly trying to work itself out of a cocoon. And a little boy comes along and he sees it struggling. And, the butterfly is just pushing and pushing its wings and trying to break out of that cocoon. And so the little boy says, I'll just help it along. So he just breaks the cocoon open so the butterfly can go ahead and fly out. Well, what happened, and it's a scientific thing, is that the butterfly needs to struggle. It has to force that blood through its little veins in order to have strong wings so it can fly. So the point is, if you try to force evolution before it's time, then you're just weakening the person or the butterfly or whatever for this example. So I've learned, I'm still learning, you cannot put something in somebody else's mind when they're not ready for it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and I've been places where I've been speaking concerning spiral dynamics and the movement there, which is also developmental, just like the Enneagram is developmental. And inevitably have people come up afterwards and say, how do I get my, and they'll name some relative generally. Could be a friend, but typically it's a relative. How do I get my sister, brother, dad, mom, child? How do I get them to see this?
To see this.
Yeah.
You know what? Remember when Eckhart did that webcast with Oprah?
Oh, yeah.
Because he had that book. It was, and I've referenced this before. It's a wonderful book. I wanted everybody to read it because it made such a difference in my life. And it's called A New Earth.
Yes.
And people asked him the question, how do I get my spouse to read this? How do I get my friends to read this book? And he said, you can't. You cannot get somebody else to do this. But here's what he said that blew my mind. The right person will come along at the right time to teach them what they need to know. And I think about that now in regards to the Enneagram and the difference in how can I share the Enneagram with my friends, or how can I get them to read the book and understand what I've come to love about this tool. And the difference between that and holding the truth that the Enneagram may not be for them.
Right.
Or now.
Or at least at this time.
Right.
That's right. And maybe never. But again, this is not something where angst should set in. I always sense this real anxiety that because a person had discovered all these great things, they actually were having anxiety almost that now this person in my family needs to know this. They need to know this. And so then when you get resistance, that's discouraging. And I think the other thing, Danae, is the kind of resistance you were talking about at the outset where you get one of the infamous internet attacks, or it's just somebody that you know, maybe a close friend or family member, and it shocks you that they make some comment that not only are they not interested in the Enneagram or spiral dynamics or whatever it is that you're working as a developmental tool, but more than that, that the thing that you are finding a lot of helpfulness in is actually a bad thing. And they want to critique it and say, like some of the comments you saw on your Instagram thing, it's not evil. Just they're not interested, right? And so that can be discouraging. But I think the reason we're talking about it today is because we're sharing with all of our friends here this common experience. And again, I'm more representative of people new to the Enneagram. And so I thought this would be a great encouragement for you to talk about this subject today, because it's easy to get discouraged when people are throwing cold water on something that you find to be very meaningful.
Yes, initially it was.
Yeah.
And again, that was that was a part of the wake-up call is, oh, wait, no, you focus on you,
Yeah.
and then you be the change
Yes.
that you want to see in the world.
Right.
But you mentioned, or I mentioned, that this person said, we were a cult and actually Satan worshipers.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an article I came across, it's been a while back. But again, this is just a small example, because you can Google and find a lot of criticism out there. And from some of the towards some of the most wonderful spiritual teachers. But anyway, so there was this one guy, and he decided that he was going to review the Enneagram. And I'll just go ahead and say it. It's a group called, oh my gosh, now what were they called?
Man, and you were just going to
The
go ahead
Gospel
and say
Coalition. The Gospel
Coalition. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And so he said he's just going to go do a whole review of the Enneagram based on one book. He said, so I'm going to read a book. And he said, admittedly, this is a limited, amount of information, because I'm just going to review the one book. But, and let me say, I don't see the Enneagram as a Christian tool at all, but I'm not offended that the people who call themselves Christian publish this book, because the tool is the tool, whoever is teaching it.
Right.
But anyways,
I'm sure there are people in Judaism and other world religions that like the Enneagram as well.
Of course.
The Enneagram and its history, and that's the other thing. You know a whole lot more about the history than I do that goes way back. So to your point, no, this is not specifically written as a Christian, Judaism, Islamic. It is not written from that perspective. It's really, I think most of us would agree that the points of it are either spiritual in nature, or if you are someone that doesn't even like that term, certainly they improve the values from a humanitarian standpoint at the very least.
That I love.
Yeah.
That's it. Yes. And so anyway, let me just
read that
my
quote,
note, because I want to read this quote. And I'll actually put a link to the article, because it's kind of mind-blowing that somebody can make a total evaluation based on one book they read. So anyways, this is what he said. I'm sure that some Christians will be quick to respond, oh, sounds like a goofy book, but that's not how I use the Enneagram. He says, I'm thankful for that. But then I'd encourage those brothers and sisters to dial back the Enneagram enthusiasm, like way back. If you want to scrap most of the Enneagram history, therapeutic baggage, and Catholic mysticism, I suppose you could have a personality tool that might open your eyes to a thing or two. But then I'd glean a few insights quietly and distance myself from the seminars, the experts, the books, the articles, and the nomenclature, I like that word, of the Enneagram. It has been, from its inception, whenever that was, infused with spiritual significance, and therein lies the danger, end quote.
Yeah, that sounds dangerous. Now,
wow.
we're saying that tongue in cheek. But this is another good place, I think.
He's not.
No, I'm saying you and I, when we're talking about the danger, wow, that's dangerous, we say that tongue in cheek. But here again, we've talked earlier that there are two types of evolution that are happening with all human beings. One is that we evolve as individuals. And in our individual evolution, right, that's where the Enneagram is a great tool.
Yes.
Okay. Then there's also our evolution in collectives, because no man is an island, and we all are defined also by our groups of people that we're in, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when you're coming from the traditional worldview in the spiral, the traditional worldview are all the friends that you would have out there that you would see as having an understanding that is more fundamental. That's where the term fundamentalist comes from. Right. It's a more fundamental view. And in that worldview, the understanding of what is the truth and defining the truth and all of the specific boundaries of what is truth is absolutely vital to a person's identity. You have to not only define those boundaries clearly, but once you embrace them, as you know, Danae, we've been in this for years and years, they become your identity, and anything outside those boundaries would be something called false, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So if you're doing this review, as this gentleman was, and it's from something called Gospel Coalition, you know they're coming out of the Bible as their narrative.
Yes.
That's their place that they go for truth. And for them, truth is very much limited to any and everything they understand to be specifically taught in the Bible. And if it's outside the Bible, you're going to hear some of your fundamentalist type friends say, why do I need to study anything or look at anything that's outside the Bible?
Oh, yes. I've heard it many, many times.
So that's the way the boundaries work. And that's why people do. This is one of the reasons that you can run in. There are many reasons you'll run into resistance, but I think this is a great example you're giving here of how resistance can come from people that are really simply expressing where they are in their traditional worldview. Once you move beyond that and you're willing to open up and be open to other things, then you're not opposed to going to a therapist. Well, you won't find Jesus in the Bible talking to people about going to a therapist. And many times you may have people in any fundamentalist type religion say that there is no need for a therapist if you would just get your heart right, or you would do something like that. So again, part of life, when I read an attack on something I've said, or you're reading something on your Instagram, or everyone out there, when you've got people that are really coming down on you, it's just understanding there's a whole lot of different places that resistance can come from. And certainly people that come from these traditional religious views are going to find anything outside their boundaries as a threat.
Yeah, we've heard the word psychobabble several times.
Yeah.
on all of the things that we talk about, it seems.
Oh, this is all psychobabble.
Anything that takes you out of your little form.
Right.
And something that you don't understand, because it's easier to stay with what you've always known, stay with the crowd, stay put, than it is to take the criticism, or even the thought of criticism, and step outside and take that risk of moving into a new thought. It's hard, I know that. But this is why, and part of when I was reading about this and thinking about the resistance, I thought, this is why for me, at this point in my journey, and like I said, I've been a part of the Enneagram for 10 years, and at some point you're going to have to stop saying that you're new to it, because you've been doing it for about 2 years.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a couple more times to say that.
I haven't read the rule book, so I don't know how this works.
Well, once I write that rule book, I'll let you know how it works.
All I needed, another rule book from you. Oh, boy.
Don't even.
Are we going down the wrong road here?
There is no rule book.
Zip, back to the beginning here.
Other than I love you.
Okay.
You love me.
There you go.
But I'm going to a conference this weekend that I'm very excited about. And it's going to be in Nashville. Ian Cron and Beatrice Chestnut are going to be the hosts of this and the speakers. And I love their work. They've been doing this for over 20 years. And that's why I'm going. That's why I'm investing my time and my money to go be a part of this opportunity to learn. And what it got me to thinking about was, there's anytime you step into a new thing, if you go out on your own, you might learn as you go and be quite successful. I'm not saying that can't be done, but there's a lot of times where you need a coach, you need a life coach, you need a business coach, you need a therapist, or as they refer to it in AA, a sponsor. And we've learned so much from AA, right?
Oh, yes.
Starting back, we had a next door neighbor who they let us know they struggle with drugs and alcohol. They did. Because they had an accident. Their deck collapsed, and the ambulance came, and they were just, saying, don't give us any drugs. Don't give him any drugs.
Right.
Because he was in addiction, which shocked the fire out of us. We didn't know what that was all about anyway. But so anyway, a few years later, the woman died.
Yeah, she had a heart
She had a
attack.
heart attack.
Not that old, in her 40s, I think.
Right.
Very young, as I sit from my perspective today.
And
yeah.
so we both, in our ignorance, were like, oh, bless their heart. Nobody will probably be at her funeral.
Yeah.
So we should go.
Yeah, we were neighbors, and we didn't know them to have any friends in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so, again, we thought, we need to go and support Tom and be there at the funeral. And we were talking that, there just may not be hardly anybody there.
And that was the shock of my life. The building was packed.
Yeah.
And what blew my mind was the number of people that got up and talked about this woman and their struggle with addiction and what her influence in their life had meant to them, how she had been their sponsor and friend and had helped them at times when no one else would talk to them because she understood the journey.
Yes. And she didn't look, if you're having some kind of struggle that is manifested that externally, that outwardly, where everyone not only sees it, but they may have been impacted by the way you've behaved because you have that as your particular weakness in life, then you know that you have gotten tremendous resistance from people in the way they talk about you, the way they categorize you, even demonize or vilify you to that extent.
Yes.
Well, what they learned and what we saw was actually, to us, the most powerful form of community you can have. And that is one without judgment, in the sense that no one there was saying, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're an alcoholic or a drug. No, they're saying, no matter what happens with your relapses and your struggles in life, just know that we're always here for you. And the beauty of that to us was that's the antidote for the resistance. In other words, resistance is throwing cold water on everything you're trying to do in life, and you're going to get criticism, and you're going to get pushback, and people maybe even making fun. So the antidote to that is what you're saying. You're going to conference this week to use that as a guide, as a sponsor, in essence, like you would if you were needing a sponsor or someone to encourage you in some other part of your life.
Because, let me just say, so I wanted to be sure and understand what the role of the AA sponsor was. So again, I'm going to read a quote, but this is out of the AA book. It says, as an AA sponsor, it defines a sponsor as an alcoholic who has made some progress in the recovery program and shares that experience on a continuous individual basis with another alcoholic who is attempting to attain or maintain sobriety through AA. This AA community that we saw at the funeral is the most powerful spiritual community I've ever seen.
No one said, "Oh, I see. You want to be a sponsor because you think you're better than everybody else." Oh, I see. You think you're more conscious. Oh, I see. You think you're more enlightened, so you want to be a sponsor. You get out of that whole realm because, again, that's the resistance criticism field.
Right.
And you're saying, no, the reason I am going to these conferences and learning the Enneagram and wanting to talk about it is so that I can be a better human being in relating to you and everybody in my universe.
And here's the deal. I'm just thinking about this. I think this is the way it works. No sponsor, no AA person goes out and tries to find somebody that they think is struggling with alcoholism and say, you need to get to AA, you need to let me be your sponsor, right?
Typically, it's coming through references. Now, you may have a sponsor actually tell you at some point, and I know this because I've worked with someone in this field, that it would be good for you to become a sponsor. But even when you become a sponsor, as I understand it, because I've only gone to these meetings for support, you're basically doing it for your own well-being. And that's the same with the Enneagram. It's the same with everything you're saying, Danae. And that's why the Enneagram becomes a guide, and people like Ian and Beatrice and all the people that you're going to see, you seek that out in life and be content in and of your own self, and let the things that come to you simply come to you when people are ready to have the discussions or seek your advice or be there for them and be at peace with that.
That's what I was saying about the sponsor. They're not going out saying, you need to do this, you need to read this, you need to read the book, big book. Now, once the person is ready to become a part of that community, then the sponsor will connect with them. All I'm saying in all of this is the power of being in a community with someone who has gone down the road before you and can be a mentor and help you in your growth process. There's so many different types of communities that you can be a part of, and everybody doesn't have to be a part of all of the ones that you're a part of, right? But that's why I love, and I'll make this little analogy because it occurred to me that for me, the Enneagram has been like a wake-up call. It has shown me what my addictions are inside my own personality. And even the ones I wanted to hang on to and I was comfortable with, even when they were detrimental to me. And so I like to think of the Enneagram. For me, it was kind of an intervention of sorts in that it woke me up to the things in my personality that I was addicted to. Now, nobody looks at AA and says, well, that's a bunch of demon worshipers.
Right.
And so I think it's why it got under my skin a little bit when somebody attacked or came at me with their resistance, because for me, this is just such a opportunity to grow in my humanity so that I can be a better person. For a brief moment, I took that personally.
Right. You had to process it. And that's the whole point of Enneagram. It's helping us to see these are our perspectives. These are our strengths and weaknesses. And it's not that those magically disappear, but we do better and better and better at processing them.
And so for me, this is a powerful truth. I have seen it work in my own life. But what's that quote that people about new truth?
Sure. Anytime somebody is faced with a new truth, and you're one of the first people to throw out this idea, so to speak, the famous quote is that it experiences three stages. First stage is it gets ridiculed. Whatever this new idea is, let's say Enneagram, it is ridiculed.
Right.
Stage 2, it's violently opposed.
Yes.
That's what you were experiencing. And then third, it's accepted as being self-evident. And that's the comedy of our developmental world. And as long as we know, as you're saying here, where these kinds of things come from and where we stand personally, we can focus on loving our number by going without fear to embrace our weaknesses, to investigate our weaknesses. And that is the way we also love our number.
I wonder where those people are on that. You think they're I think it's the violently opposed stage.
From what you read, that's what it sounds like. It's violently opposed. Yeah.
I think the guy who wrote the article, though, he must be in the first stage of ridiculing.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, but you could tell by the language of the violence of language, and that's the thing. Even though we're not in olden days where we're going out and killing millions of people on the planet in a world war, character assassination is very much alive and well through social media. And so there are many forms of violence out there. This is basically today, and I think we're running out of time probably. This today is really just kind of an encouragement talk based on what you experienced and what you and I have talked about before we go back to specific numbers. It's just, if you're out there and you're kind of in an area where you feel like you don't have friends that you can talk with about things that involve developmental growth, don't be discouraged. You are part of our family. We are always glad to hear from you. Danae, obviously is doing this so that she can increase the connectivity.
Absolutely. And I just say again, find your community. There are people out there who want to be on that path with you. Find your sponsor, your mentor, your community. And don't get upset when other people don't want to jump on board with you right away. That is their growth process. It is in their time. Don't try to break anybody out of their cocoon before it's time. You will just end up making them weaker. And so as we wrap up, I'm going to say, I'm so excited about heading up to Nashville. I'm sure I'll have a lot to say about that in future podcasts and meeting this group of people. I can't wait to be with them this weekend. Y'all have a great July 4th. Love that family and friends and have some barbecue. But most importantly, I hope you get to understand the joy of who you truly are by loving your own number. See you next time.